Okay, so I cut out the remnants of the frame rail extension that was in there, and then also the new frame rail extension, which is not needed, that was on this side over here. Try to clean that up a little bit and going around and trying to neaten up these inside seams. Also working on cleaning some of the rust out of the interior of this door pillar here. This is completely disconnected from, I cut this clean because this is supposed to be connected down here. So I've got to put a piece of metal in here and reconnect that. Also I have to come in here, put a little bit of metal in this area here. There looks like there was some rust repair. Right here there was a patch put in. So something happened there, and I'm seeing a lot of welds. See all these, this pitted area here, there's a lot of welds in the pitted area, so there must have been a little daylight coming through there. But my next project over here is taking this piece that I took off of the door pillar of the Challenger, and this is where the wiring harness is captured, where it comes through, and there's a little rubber grommet that fits into this opening, so I cut this a little bit large. I'm in the process of cutting through both pieces of material here. I've scribed it here, here, and here, and that'll give me an exact hole for this to drop in. And what I'll do is I'll try to cut it like a door and then push it in and tack it before I cut this last bit on the back side. That way it's held in place as I go along and line it up. This is the area, this little crisscross of where the center of the large 3-inch wiring hole that's on the side of that subframe over there. Okay, I don't know if you can see that yet, but I've cut through, and you can see where now I'm just pushing it in. I've taken the interior material and it's just pushed away slightly so that I don't re-weld it back in the hole. And I'll tack this in, and I'll complete the cut on the back side, including the places where I tack welded it, top and bottom in these corners. And then I'll weld this piece in to position. By the way, this is a good time to do a lot of this stuff. I know people are probably anxious to see this fit down onto the other chassis, and so am I. But it's better to do all this stuff where you can do it standing up, and you can walk in and out of this car, and once you got it locked together, you got to crawl in and out, you got to kneel down, unless you've got a lift, which I don't. A lot of these projects, especially the stuff inside the car that has to be worked on, is a lot tougher when you got to crawl in and out 100 times. Okay, so that's what that looks like, all welded in, ground down. Now I got a few more things to do on this side, and then I'll swap over to the other side and repeat. Okay, some cut choices that I made here that probably a little aggressive, but this is a straight cut from the pinch weld on the door, the inner rocker here, and straight level up this way. There's some inner structure that I left on the other car that's up about this high, and so I mean there's plenty of room up here in this area, but I'll just build that back. So this gives me about a 1/2 inch on either side that I'll be clear of that structure, hopefully. Anyway, the other thing I'm doing right now is right in this area, this little rounded over gusseting going on right here from the windshield bed to this door pillar. Now I'm going to cut it away. I don't want to. This is a pretty good strength point here as far as keeping this all squared up. But I'm just going to cut it straight across here and then down here, which I've already done on this side over here. And this is like the closest distance I have to be able to pull the dashboard substructure out on the other car. So that comes up right around in this area here, the top of it. So in order to leave as much of that intact as possible, I'm going to cut this out. I am going to come back in here and strengthen this up and re-gusset this area right here just to make that all nice and square. But a couple of cut choices that I'm making here to make a little bit more clearance. I don't know if you can see it, but this is what I'm talking about. In other words, this area is squared off right in here, and this is where that door opening comes across, so there's a little interference here, and I just want to make sure that this dash frame is able to be pulled straight out if necessary. Okay, so I took some 60,000 steel and gusseted that back in, tied it to this subcowl over here, and to the door frame over here. So I'm going around in the interior of the door pillars and places that are kind of inaccessible to really clean up too well with some of the rust on some of these older parts. First, I'm taking a wire wheel like this so I can get into the nooks and crannies as best I can to get rid of all of the scale, and then I'm treating it by brushing on some of this OSFO. You can spray it on, which is more effective, but you know, the problem is you get any on the floor, it'll eat a hole to china. So it reacts with its phosphoric acid, and it'll basically react with the concrete. So I brushed it on here to neutralize all the rust before I give it a coat of some rust primer, and then we'll go on from there. Well, I hope you can see what I'm talking about in this little segment of the video. What I've done is, now that I've got most of the obstructions cut away in the other car, I was able to take the door template, the door opening template I should say, that has a little block on it, and it also, so it could sit on the pinch weld of both cars and give me the proper relationship as far as height is concerned, also the front to rear location. I've got a straight edge, long straight edge, clamped to it to see how it projects out now to the package tray area, and as predicted, I have to cut a little bit more material off that. This rise over here is too high. The package tray surface in the old car is about 1 3/4 inches up from the top edge of the straight edge here, which is exactly where this piece of substructure that I had left in this car lays, right here, except for this little tip up in the flange there. I'll have to cut that and flatten that back out if I want to leave this structure in, which I kind of did. My only problem with this is the charcoal canister is in that pocket there, and I'll have to remount it about probably 3/4 inch lower in order to be able to just cut the top of that wheel tub off and flatten it out and put a cap on it. But now that I'm getting closer to having, you know, I can draw straight lines and pull strings and everything, I can see exactly where everything is. It's going to be just a little bit too high back in this area over here. It's better that I just cut it off flat. The other thing that's a little bit disappointing is I left this structure in here because it keys to a panel that has a couple of it has the weld nuts in it that would allow me to put the seats in and clip them. The clips for the seats that secure the seats to the back, they've run through a slot in the actual back of the seat. Well, that's attached to the top section. I'll put that on real quick here so you can see what I'm talking about. You could see these two pockets up here. That's where there's these brackets that swing out, and the seats just, that's what secures the back of the seat to the package tray area, and those are about almost 3.5 inches higher than where the package tray is. I could probably do something funny there, but I'm not gonna. I'm going to try and trim the seats down so that they look decent relative to the package tray, which is a whole nother job. But I think it'll look kind of funny to have really giant, tall seat backs when you look through the rear window of this car. Okay, that didn't turn out to be as bad as I thought it would be. The scariest part is I still couldn't take this thing loose, and I didn't want to force it because everything's plastic, and I don't want to be trying to figure out how to get all that stuff back together if I break it. There's only one nut on the front here, and it just pivots out over here and drops down. Something's fighting me in there. Don't know what it is. Can't see. Not going to mess with it. So I just inadvisably put some tinfoil over top of all the connections and everything, and wrapped it up pretty tight before I started cutting with this cut-off wheel. Anyway, all I ended up doing was taking a pie cut out of this section here and then bending this flange flat. You can see what I was talking about before. This rise here will have to be flattened out also, because this will line up directly with the level of the package tray in the other car. And I'll have to go around, transmit this flat line around here and trim the rest of this off. Probably coming across here. Might have to nick this bracket, but this just holds a wire. It's nothing important. My main concern was this front mount for this canister here. I didn't want to change the angle of it, so I would have had to move it straight down. I don't know if that's critical to the operation of this canister being pitched up like this, but I got to think that there's a reason why it's mounted on an up pitch like this when the wheel hole would normally just go like this. Who knows? Just might be the size. Anyway, don't want to mess with that angle, and so it's still mounted in its stock location, and I was able to get this to be flat across without disturbing it. Okay, just as a guide to help me trim off this excess, I just used a level. It's not that it's going to be level once this car gets all the weight. This is actually going to be pitched downhill, but all I just needed was a reliable gauge to get across this compound shape, and I just used a little hand level, so that worked out okay. I'll probably just end up making a cap here and gluing it on with some panel adhesive, as opposed to welding up in this area, obviously, because I have this fuel charcoal canister. I don't want to add a lot of heat to this area while that's mounted. That's the cost of not knowing right there. Anyway, you can see this flange. I'm already starting to flatten it out a little bit. You can see from the back side here, this section from here to here is already bent down and dollied out till it's flat, so that it also just doesn't interfere. Okay, now that that's all decked off, I haven't capped it yet, but created this interference pattern, a little piece of 1/8" masonite. It's relieved where the substructure for the Dutchman panel goes, into the package tray area. So that's kind of locating where it goes based on this leading edge, based on how far that straight edge came back to this line. It's about straight edge came back to here, plus 2 inches is where this should lay. The reason I need this is because this surface represents the bottom of the package tray. Well, there are some flanges that go in about 3/4 of an inch in a downward direction, and I need to know how much of those flanges I need to clear out for this wheel tub to not interfere with that. So going to put that up inside the car and see what's going on. A little back and forth. Hopefully it'll eliminate some of the up and down with the body. Okay, once again, just based on the door opening, sitting on the pinch weld, running a straight edge all the way out to here. Plus, this is where it hits on the inside of the structure, plus 2 inches to this leading edge. This leading edge now is the front of the new package tray. So you can see all of this has to go. But I'm just going to take this a little bit at a time. Don't want to go crazy taking too much out at once. These give me my interference with my wheel tubs. So this flange will have to be removed from this point all the way around to at least this point. In which time, once that's removed, I'll weld this back to the upright part of the C-post reinforcement, so that doesn't lose any strength after I remove that. That'll allow everything to sit right down. This won't interfere. I want to keep these corners if I can. I'm going to be replacing the structure, the package tray itself, hopefully from here to the back of the window, with the package tray top shelf that came out of the other car, because it already has the speaker holes and everything to accommodate the stuff that mounts under there. So rather than reinvent that, I'm going to try and mend that in here, which means some of this structure here has to go, but then I'll hopefully be just boxing it back up and, you know, keeping the strength in it as I go. Like I said, this is probably, you know, you might think it's overkill, but, you know, pulling the body back off and on is a real pain. So if I can minimize the amount of time it has to go up and down, I'm sure there's going to be areas that are going to be bumping, and I'm going to have to re-clearance here and there. But let's see if this gets me as close as I can get. Okay, it's hard for me to keep this in focus because it's so dark under here, but you can see that the flange is trimmed away now, and it's been re-welded, spot welded all the way around, so that the substructure of the C-pillar is now welded directly to the top of the package tray, and it's clearanced out, hopefully enough for me to drop down over top of it. The other car, I mean. We'll see if that's true. On this side over here, on the top side I should say, I've gotten rid of these two flanges that go down across the corner. They're normally used, that's where your headliner comes down across there. We're going to put a custom headliner in here that's going to follow the contour of this. Plus I need a little bit more space over here because it's looking like that's where one of the speakers is going to go, but we might end up doing some different things there. I haven't figured that one out quite yet. Got to make a pattern at the top of this one here and compare it to the other piece and see how that's going to fit together. Okay, here's a quick look at the clearance pattern and how it fits flat, how up against the bottom of the package tray, and that was my objective. Hopefully that'll all work out. We shall see. Okay, so I've taken that package tray from the new car and I've trimmed it all out to a minimum size, and I decided instead of trying to put it in one piece like this, so I need this hole, I need that hole, and that hole. This is for a child seat belt, so this is not necessary here. So I'm going to take 8 inches out from here to here, eliminate this, and move both halves together. This will put the speakers closer to the center of the car, and that's because I want that because it's tight in that back seat post, and I don't have to struggle to try and get these speakers to go down in the hole. But also, that dimension is based on the fact that I can take and drill out these spot welds here and remove this center panel, or at least most of it. I'll have to cut it in the back, of course, and I'll also have to cut portion of this structure out here, which then again I'll stiffen this back up with a vertical piece. But if I can just neatly leave these corners in, that'd be dandy, and just lay that other piece on. This is actually the front edge of the new package tray, where it ends up right here. So it's a very short package tray from here to here. So I've got a very small area. I want to be able to get those speakers in, and you're down close to the glass here where the glass comes down. So it'll be a little bit tricky there. So I'm kind of playing with fire here, but I'll give it a try with one of the speakers before I finalize it. And that's where I'm going with this. All right, so this is where I am. I cut out the existing package tray in the 68. I drilled it out and maintained the corners of the package tray because that's where all my references are. So we got rid of this forward section, and then you can see this is the this area right here is that forward section of that lower structural piece, the plenum, that holds up the Dutchman panel and the back of the window. So I'll show you what that looks like inside the car. Okay, you can see there's plenty of the plenum still left for the strength. I'm going to box that in. I'll cover that front section with some 035 to strengthen that back up. You can see that this is the windshield, or excuse me, the back window bed right here. So there's a little piece that comes down here in an L shape, so it's still got quite a bit of strength going across here. This stays. So you can see the ends here. This is approximately where the new package tray starts, right here. So I've cleaned up this, and also on this side over here, so I can lay everything out on here. I took a piece of just some aluminum flashing to quick make up a straight edge. And the reason I did that is because it's got a back flange that goes on an angle, and as a front flange that keeps it rigid, so that I could set it in right here, and I could strike a line straight across here by clamping this to this inner piece, and that'll give me a nice straight line across. The back here, where it's got to be fabricated, there is a bit of curvature in this. It's touching in the middle, and it's about 1/4 of an inch away, so this piece here will have to be made as a separate flange, and it'll have to be stretched around here to be able to fit flush against this inner piece here, so I can weld it up over here. So that'll be the start point of how I'll attach that. Right now, though, I've just taken the and modified the Challenger package tray top, which has the amplifier hole and the 2 speaker holes. I cut out a section 8 inches here and moved it in. This, I believe, this little spot over here is for the trunk light, so I couldn't eliminate that, so you got to be careful about that. This has a little bit of a peak to it. I'll just flatten that out and weld that up here. But I have to make a piece that makes up for this distance over here, and I also have to make sure that I'm clear of all my holes when I add this flange on the back side over here. And I'll show you the rest of that when I get to it. But I just folded over the front edge here and kind of smashed it flat, leaving it a little bit round to give it a little bit of strength between now and when we bring it over and put it on the other car. Hopefully this will join up to the piece that's already in the car, and that'll be a good solid connection for the strength on the front edge. Anyway, this will all be gone in the front all the way back over to this area here. I've gone and welded up this area over here. On the bottom side I showed you that already. So that's the direction I'm taking. I just want to take a look at this real quick here to see what I'm up to. Like I said, that back flange is going to have to be rounded so that it makes a nice snug fit, and I'll have to make up the difference between the curvature of the back glass that was in the Challenger, you can see, and I've already trimmed it flat here in the middle, and then it's going to have another piece added in over here in order to square it up with the hole. Okay, I just wanted to show you this flange now that I've taken it and kind of rough cut it and put it in place. You see I have it clamped to this piece right here. What I had to do in order to get that to happen is I had to take the sheet metal stretcher and just bump it very gently, create a slight arc across the top here so that it would close up on the ends, because there's a slight curvature in this direction right here. So now that I've got that, I've got a nice clean deck to work with, and I can mark out where it's got to join to the other panel. All right, I just got done finished capping off that structural box, the abbreviated structural box. It's the plenum underneath of the Dutchman panel. So now I've got it all sprayed with weld-through primer, and I'm going to put in the other piece as soon as this dries up. Okay, the next piece to go in is the filler piece. So that's plug welded along the center here, and then once we get past this box, it's welded on the back side. So that flange is stiffened up quite a bit, and it goes around the corner here and decks out here. And I've also put a piece of 1 inch by 1 inch aluminum here to hold these two corners level as I install the final panel, because the final panel doesn't have anything to keep it all straight. So to make sure that I don't end up with a lot more material, you know, because it could go up or go down, so that I'll be able to flatten it out, put this piece in the front. That's why I maintain my edges and my corners. So that's something to clamp everything to and keep it nice and square. Okay, so that's what it looks like, all welded in along the back and down the sides. I have to continue this cut right across here, get rid of this front corner on both sides, and then it's time to move on to the next step. Alright, with the package tray tidied up a bit, it's time to move on to trimming these rockers off the excess material that I'm going to need. So what I did was I made a new profile, and what this profile is based on is on the new car we had a profile that determined where the rocker was, but now we need to have a profile that determines how far we have to bend down the sheet metal to just get underneath this new frame rail. So this is what I have, and it's basically, we're just trying to determine the length from here to here of how much more sheet metal, because as you bend it down, obviously the short piece of sheet metal will have to get longer in order to reach this point over here. And so what I've done here is this will be about 1 7/8 inches, this leg, so I'll just take a measurement from the inside out, 1 7/8 inches, mark it, cut a straight line, and that'll be my trim line. Also, I will have to, when I do end up bending it down, I'll have to do some finagling up here, because obviously this compound shape will not bend down, so I'll have to cut it free right about here, and then drop it down. And then once this line has been trimmed and this has been dropped down, I'll use this to bend this down to the angle, get it close, then I'll cut this off in the approximate area that lines up straight with that new cut line. So I've trimmed off my rockers. I've sprayed some weld-through primer on my pinch welds, put some rust primer on the inside of the door jambs, finished up with the new package tray, and cleared out as much material as I planned to. And this would be the point at which you'd be dropping the body down on the other car, which I'd be excited to do, but I have a couple of steps that I have to do for this particular car. Before that, one of them is to build a custom headliner, and the best time to do that is while I can stand up inside the car just like I am right now. So while that's something that could be put off till later, later means climbing in and out of the car, stepping all over the wires and all over the console, and trying to protect the wiring from being burned, because this is going to be some metal work here. Also, I have to install the sun visors, the rearview mirror, the make mounts for, like I said, the sun visors, and any lights or grab bars that'll be along the edge here. We're not going to reinstall the rear seat belts, so I won't have to put in any pockets. Normally I'd be putting in a pocket somewhere up in the seat pillar over here. But I will be doing the metal work for a center overhead console, because there's some controls over here, some courtesy lights that have to be installed. Also in the back, the third tail light has to be installed up near the ceiling in the back window. So all of that has to come into play, and that's what's happening next.